You know, when it comes to the Batman, there's no denying that Robert Pattinson's casting choice was met with its share of criticism due to his prior roles in the Twilight series as a shiny, watered-down interpretation of a vampire who's almost always at a loss for words whenever put on screen next to his plank of wood love interest. However, his dedication to his roles afterwards always hinted that when given the opportunity, his acting ability could genuinely have a lot more potential to shine when not being written as a character who literally does so. This darker and edgier rendition of Batman from Robert Pattinson in this rainy, corrupt city of Gotham, combined with Michael Giacchino's scores for the theme throughout this film, really make this movie something to take more seriously when compared to other adaptations of the character.
This is why Superman works alone.
In The Batman, Pattinson brings this very same seriousness to the character that we've all already seen multiple adaptations of. Each one slightly less farcical than the one before it until we had Batfleck screaming, "Why did you say that name?" And it all seemed to feel like the character just may not ever be topped by Christian Bale's performance, despite people's gripes about his voice when confronting criminals face to face.
Tell me about the rabbits.
Can you be more threatening?
Tell me about the rabbits.
Rabbits. And I get to tend to rabbits.
Needless to say, every time we've had a Batman movie, the movie is either predominantly focused on the villains or equally balanced between the villains and Batman himself in his own movies. Batman Begins was essentially the exception to this, where Bruce Wayne himself is actually explored early on in the film, when he's training and understanding just how dangerous it is to contend with true antagonists, who are just as dedicated to fulfilling their goals as he is, rather than just petty criminals. Only after all this has been established is when the pace of Batman Begins really takes off. This is what set apart Batman Begins as one of the few movies where Batman or Bruce Wayne himself actually seem to be the dominant character of the movie and who the film is actually supposed to be about. With that being said, this is what Pattinson's Batman also manages to achieve, while also taking it one step further. In this movie, we get to see Bruce as a Batman moderately early into his crime-fighting days, but who's also experienced enough to have been doing this long enough to harness his fighting skills and even establish a reputation for himself in the eyes of Gotham's criminals and among the police force as well. Though, as experienced as he may be, it appears the character is still fairly discontent with the impact he's made on the city of Gotham, and even goes so far as to question whether he's made an impact on Gotham at all through his methods of inducing fear into the hearts of criminals, as they question who could be watching from the shadows of Gotham at night. He's young and still fighting not only with the criminals of Gotham's underbelly, but fighting his own inner demons as well. Here, he's still devastated by the helplessness he felt after the death of his own parents by men of equally sinister caliber, whom he now fights on a nightly basis. He fights with vengeance as his weapon to callously bring the criminals of Gotham to their knees with his weighted body armor and punches he neglects to hold back on, as the faces of criminals become a medium for him to release his rage upon, in a city of darkness, rain, and corruption. This is a city that's been driven into a complete state of crime and hostility for decades by the corrupt actions of those in power at the expense of its everyday citizens, all culminating into the state Gotham has found itself in today. A city like this presents quite a challenge for anyone to take it upon themselves to save, and in this modern LA noir atmosphere Gotham is set in, Pattinson makes excellent use of the tone and setting of this version of Gotham City by bringing a version of Batman that nearly every movie has failed to highlight about his life, him being a detective, and the fact that Batman himself is not only a great fighter ready to take on any threat to the city head on, but his intelligence and natural obsession with detective work needed to pose a strategical threat to Gotham's worst sheds light on the intelligence the character has always had. And in a live-action movie, this was refreshing to see Batman as a threat in this manner, rather than just the physical and tactical threat he poses after inserting himself into hostile situations. However, this is a Batman that is virtually undetectable as a billionaire playboy who moonlights as a vigilante like Christian Bale's Batman.
Well, a guy dresses up like a bat clearly has issues.
Pattinson's Batman and Bruce Wayne present themselves in very similar ways here. This version of Bruce Wayne isn't focused on renting out yachts full of ballerina models as an alibi, landing his helicopter on a skyscraper and walking into a fundraiser party with more models under each arm, or buying a hotel on a whim just so that more of his eye-candy appearance-keeping dates can swim in the pool area for the hell of it. Pattinson's Bruce Wayne goes nearly the entire movie without spending a dime as a billionaire would. He may be one, but in this movie he acts as though he's a billionaire in name only. Regardless as to whether or not he's in his Batman or Bruce Wayne attire, his car, his clothes, his suits, his gadgets, with the exception of his camera contact lenses and the engine on the back of his Batmobile, nearly all of it appears to have been handmade and that anyone with enough time and dedication could have arguably made this attire themselves. None of it is flashy or over the top in any way. Even as Bruce Wayne, his haircut and clothes are for the most part unkempt. He even drives himself rather than being driven by Alfred in some limo. This Bruce Wayne may be a billionaire, but you wouldn't know it visually unless you're told for the most part. Same goes for his Batman. His effectively making all of his gear, gadgets, suit, car, and armor by hand really allows this Batman to blend in pretty seamlessly with the rest of the people of Gotham, as a man who simply has a lot of time on their hands, which dismisses the idea of a billionaire being under the mask quite effectively. So, does this mean he's wearing hockey pads? No, not in the slightest. Actually, the biggest suspension of disbelief for this movie is his suit having the same level of plot armor as an Iron Man suit. Despite the whole rubber mask and flexible cloth joints being a thing of course, alongside the sheer weight of it not impeding his movements in any way. But whatever, moving on. This suit is weighted and capable of withstanding gunshots and even small explosives at point-blank range, making the punches he throws and the very steps he takes all the more impactful for his opponents. The squishing sounds of his opponents' faces being amplified so audibly really implies these criminals either stop their crimes after their encounters with Batman willingly, or literally spend the next few years of their lives in physical therapy or a damn coma after meeting face to face with Obito.
Vengeance.
His steps clink and clang the ground as he approaches most enemies. His stature is tall, broad, and that of someone quick to resolve conflicts through unrestrained violence, which makes him far from the skinny Batman most people anticipated from Pattinson's rendition of the character. This Bruce Wayne may neglect his appearance due to his late nights spent as a detective obsessing over his work, but anticipating a billionaire with dark circles under his eyes who needs a haircut as Batman himself simply sounds like a huge leap on its face. Even during his confrontation with Riddler, despite how it seems at first, it appears as though Bruce Wayne is potentially only referenced to Batman as his target, rather than Riddler outright saying he knows Batman's true identity. At the very least, despite the heavy implication of Riddler knowing Batman's identity by saying Bruce's name to the Batman in the trailers, by the end, you're truly left wondering if this was actually the case, or if Riddler knew all along, but due to his ego, simply wanted to destroy Batman himself rather than let others do it by revealing his identity. Matt Reeves' interpretation of Batman is an excellent take on the status of Gotham itself and how it's gotten to the state it's in through years of corruption. In Reeves' interpretation, there is heavy emphasis on the shortcomings of Gotham by showing the audience first-hand corruption via Carmine Falcone and the Penguin. I can't help but feel that Penguin being cast by Colin Farrell here, however, almost seemed entirely unnecessary for the short amount of screen time and equally short amount of emphasis on the character. Andy Serkis plays more of a concerned Alfred who's cared for the Waynes and young Bruce over the years in ways that only a father could. However, it simply can't be ignored that this was a total miscast for this character due to the actor being entirely too young to have ever played such a role in Bruce's life. He simply comes off as more of an older sibling instead. Jeffrey Wright's portrayal of Lieutenant James Gordon is one on par with Gary Oldman in the same way that he's simply been through it all as a lieutenant officer and doesn't hesitate to put his badge on the line for Batman. His ability to do this clearly comes from years of experience and being fluent with all the ways he can get Batman where he needs him, as well as getting him the hell out of there in a pinch convincingly at no fault of his own. Zoe Kravitz's role as Catwoman actually managed to bring a dimension to a female character that is simply hard to come by these days considering realistic and flawed characters of both genders were here, something not as rare in the real world as Disney would have you believe. Her character is well written enough to not overshadow or rival Batman in his own movie, or overwhelm us with a strong female character who's capable of overpowering a room full of men simply because the writers want her to.
Here, please hit me as hard as you can.
Squidward, I'm Ray Skywalker.
Don't hold back.
This portrayal of Catwoman may have some subtle instances of puppet men falling to the ground on demand at the slightest touch by her, like Hollywood tends to spoon-feed us these days.
Eat it!
neat. Thank you.
But for the most part, this character is actually allowed to be overpowered in a realistic way by most of her male adversaries once the distance is closed. Stakes, vulnerability, weakness, and cost being absent from the majority of female roles these days not only robs them of their character, relatability, and everyday human pitfalls, but it also robs the audience of reasons to care about the character's journey, considering by the end of most films in Hollywood, now each female character hardly has a journey. Each new movie ending with the character in the same place they started due to their sheer inability to fail at anything the movie puts in front of them. Catwoman refreshingly diverts from that narrative a bit and manages to actually have realistic character flaws and physical limitations, which honestly made this portrayal feel more authentic and believable. Paul Dano's Riddler comes in the picture quite convincingly as well.
I love those clear frame glasses. There's just something about them over the mask.
So maybe we tried on 200 pairs of glasses.
Well, Paul, 200 pairs of glasses later, I'd say you made the right choice. This Riddler matches the background you'd expect him to have quite well. He has the type of background that when combined with his intellect, perfectly matches a personality type consistent with his awkward and underdeveloped social skills that come with being a recluse stuck online. Now, as far as the biggest things that hold this film back, the first one that comes to mind is undoubtably the runtime. A 3-hour-long film like this has a large burden to bear when it comes to holding your attention consistently and evenly throughout. This is ultimately where the film falls short, or rather, not short enough. Some of the dialogue and slower paced scenes simply go on for too long with no reward worthy of them being absolutely necessary to be included in this film, making the movie about 1/5 longer than it needed to be. Lastly, when it comes to addressing the more controversial gripes people have had with the film, it's become clear that a lot of people seem to be concerned with some characters having been race swapped and the not so subtle undertones of the allusions to what's going on in today's political and social climate outside of the theater. People are quick to point out the corrupt victims of the Riddler responsible for the state Gotham is in being entirely made up of straight white men, while more diverse leaders are elected in the background. The line by Catwoman at the end may have been as subtle as a brick to a glass harmonica in comparison to the rest of the film, but honestly, though it may have clearly been present, its being relegated to such a small part of the background of the film allowed it to go mostly ignored and simply overlooked pretty easily due to just how little impact it has on the plot or characters of the film as a whole. Regardless, despite being a modern movie with subtle modern messages, this film was done with a great amount of respect towards the various Batman interpretations we've had throughout the years, and finally we get to see a version of Gotham City that actually looked the part, rather than the Tim Burton caricature, or the cleanest version of Gotham ever put to film that was Gotham in the Dark Knight trilogy. What appears to be another trilogy in the making, after seeing The Batman, you might just feel a sense of optimism about the direction DC took this grittier Batman in than we're used to seeing. But true to the grittiness of Gotham itself, I say this Batman is exactly what such a city needs, making this recent surprise of potentially 2 more films with Battinson undoubtably a welcome one. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you liked it, feel free to comment below what movie you'd like me to review next. Just like with the next installments with Battinson's Batman, whether they're good, whether they're bad, remember, I'll fucking judge.